The camera's live.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Regional Services Committee meeting for November 25th. I hope everyone is doing well. This is definitely challenging times for everyone. I first of all would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people. And with that, I'd like an approval of today's agenda. Motion to approve. It's been moved. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Is there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Director Sebring, is that just a lull in were you opposed? Oh, okay, sorry, it's just a little bit of a lull in on your screen. So we're moving on now to the adoption of the minutes, Regional Services Committee meeting of October 28th, 2020. Been moved. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Is there any business arising from the minutes, Ms. Legault?
There is not.
And now we have the public input period. Do we have any submissions for this morning?
We have not received any submissions.
Thank you. We'll move on now to delegations. D1. Ms. Legault?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item D1 is Synergy Enterprises regarding Project Zero, but I don't see the delegate in our meeting as yet. So perhaps we could reorder the agenda and bring Mr. Horn in first and see if the other delegation joins the meeting.
Sure. That's great. We'll move to D2.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item D2 is John Horn, Executive Director, Cowichan Housing Association, with an update on the COVID-19 task force initiatives and funding for a rent bank.
Yes, good morning all. Thanks for having me today.
Good morning.
So I just wanted to launch in, if that's all right, and just talk about a couple of the things that we're doing at Cowichan Housing and delivering the regional housing service. And so I wanted to start with an initiative we're wanting to proceed on this year, and it's a rent bank. And we've been contemplating the potential impact of the COVID pandemic on. There's lots of economic impacts that are going to happen for folks, and we're cognizant that there are some people in the renter community who are going to be feeling, some economic stress coming up. So we looked at various options about how we might respond to that, and in discussion with colleagues and partners around the province, we can identify the rent bank function as a potential. So the rent bank is what it sounds like. We would capitalize a rent bank with the first year of unspent allocations that we've got from the CBRD Regional Housing Service. There's a housing loss prevention program component to that funding. And this is a way to help people who are finding themselves in arrears with their rent to come and borrow enough money to pay the rent. And then there's a fairly generous payback time. We give up to a year, potentially 2 years to pay that back. There's no interest charge. There's a small administrative fee for the work that we do to manage the portfolio. And the goal is, of course, is that people can come in and rather than being evicted from their premises, their rental premises, so they have an opportunity to borrow up to $1,500 from the rent bank. This is a model that's used in Kamloops and Prince George. There's a provincial rent bank function that's right across the province, and BC Housing is supporting that BC rent bank, and we've been working with them as well. And so the way we've decided we'd like to do this, we'd like to capitalize the rent bank with funding that we have not yet spent from the CBRD from 2019. And then we'd like to work with our partners in the community to do sort of a hub and spoke model. What we've learned from talking to other communities is that the repayment of the rent bank loans is much higher when there's a direct connection between the agency that's managing the loan and the client that's receiving it. So we would work with our partners in the community who would identify and bring forward candidates who are eligible to ask for a loan, and then they would support us in following up with that loan and ensuring the repayment. The second component is that a lot of them provide additional supports when you come and ask for a loan, such as financial literacy. We would want to do that as well, and working with our partners, we would contract them to provide financial literacy courses or budgeting courses, whatever they thought that the client might benefit from in order to not have to reappear before us again asking for money. So we think that's a good way for us to use some of the dollars that have been allocated under the Regional Housing Service. And we would capitalize that with the unspent allocation from 2019, and that's about $98,000. And then going forward, we'll provide a staffing function that will manage the rent bank component. That won't be the entirety of the jobs, but that'll be how we're spending the 2020 allocation that's coming to us in addition to the existing wages, etc. So that hub and spoke model will be meeting with our partners in the community, identifying some key nonprofits who are going to be able to participate in that. And we'll also bolster that by our existing program where we provide grants to people who are facing eviction due to rent arrears or unpaid utility bills. So we'll have the two programs running concurrently. One is a granting program. We provide up to $500 for people to pay their rent or to pay their hydro bill, and they're not expected to repay that. But that's exclusively aimed because it's Indigenous funding from the federal government for members of the community who are Indigenous. This rent bank would have a much broader scope, wouldn't cover the entirety of the CBRD, and would be aimed at all those folks who have the capacity to repay, but are finding themselves in a momentary time and place where they're not able to pay their rent. So we said when we came to you last time that we had these unspent dollars that were in our bank account, and we were looking for how we best allocate those. And in discussion with our board and with partners in the community, we think that the rent bank function is the way to go. So I'm just wanted to touch base with you today to let you know that that is our intent to move forward as of beginning in January to put in place a rent bank function and to make that available for members of the community. We would do it on a 2-year basis, and at the end of that 2-year frame, we'd evaluate how that's working, what kind of repayments are we getting, and the industry standard seems to be about 85% of the money comes back. That allows you, of course, to continue the rent bank function over time. The capital does diminish eventually, but it does allow you from the repayment schedule to kind of continue well beyond the first 2 years. But we would take the first 2 years to look at how that's working and to see what impact we're having and what repayments we're getting, et cetera, and make any changes we felt we needed. So that's our obligation to come back and tell you how we were going to spend those dollars, and we think that the rent bank function is the way to go. So that's just something I wanted to touch base on. I just would maybe take a pause there and ask if anyone has any questions or comments about that proposed use of those dollars.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. I see a few hands up. I'll go to Director Marsh, then Director Wilson. Go ahead, Director Marsh.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Horn. This is really exciting to me. I'm so glad that CHA is there and you're on top of all of the social issues that it's difficult for municipalities and regional districts to manage. And this is really encouraging. And yeah, I'm also hoping we're going to get some low income assistance level income housing built. I guess that's coming in a couple of years, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So you're not talking about those funds at all. You're talking about the other.
Yeah, our operational dollars that are provided to us each year. That's where the source of this money is from. Yeah.
Okay. If I may, Madam Chair, can I ask one more question?
Follow up. Go ahead.
Thank you. So are you going to, I heard you say a couple communities, I forget their names, I think Kamloops might have been one, that BC Housing is doing this. Is there a chance that BC Housing would do that for us too, or?
Yes, but we did apply. There was a round of calls for rent bank, people interested in having rent banks in the community, and there was some funding available. We did make application to that for rent bank funding. Unfortunately, we were not successful in getting it. So other communities gobbled up all those dollars. Nonetheless, Rent Bank BC has agreed to support our work in the back office kind of way and help us do our procedures and our forms and those sorts of things. They're going to standardize those across the province. And there may be a future round of funding they've indicated where there'll be additional dollars they can contribute to the rent bank function. But because we weren't successful in getting money from that, we thought we would just plow ahead anyhow. And if there's a second round of applications, we'll submit an application and seek support from that Rent Bank BC, they're called, and they're funded by BC Housing. So that's the approach we're going to take. We weren't successful in round one. So
thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to hear from you.
Thank you. Moving on to Director Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, John. How are you doing?
Morning, Mike. Very well.
Good. I'm in favour of this. I've no objection at all to helping anyone who needs that help. My biggest concern, obviously, is that this becomes or encourages people to rely on this income and a constant circle of borrowing and trying to repay and borrowing. And there's the problem right there. I'll help anybody. I'll lend money to anybody, but I got to make sure that it's not just a question of, oh, here it is. You see what I'm getting at here.
Yeah. And if I can comment on that, the typical standard in the rent bank rule is you don't make repeated loans to a client because they don't want to drive them into a debt cycle where they can't get out. And we're all cognizant how difficult that can make life for people. So the general principle is you loan them once every 1 or 2 years, and that's the maximum. So you don't kind of burden them with a bunch of debt that they owe to now Couch and Housing Association.
Yeah.
And secondly, we recognize that sometimes it's because people's budgeting skills need a bit of support or maybe some help to enhance those. So typically there's a financial literacy component that goes with it. And they work with the client to identify where's the budget, where's your money going each month, where can you make changes to make sure this doesn't happen again. So we do try to enhance their skills in that sense. They don't reappear before us.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Director Acton, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Director Wilson, I just wanted to borrow some money. Just a joke there. Mr. Horn, your proposal, it sounds like a great idea. I'd never considered a loan bank to this degree before. And it sounds like you can take a small amount of money and affect a large amount of change and support to people in the community who need it the most when it's at a really vulnerable time. And it would be nice to see the province step up since, local governments continue to take on these types of initiatives. And with their support, we could do a lot more. So anyway, it sounds great. And thanks for coming today and keeping us up to date.
Thank you. We move on to Director Morrison, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, John. This is a really critical feature, and I would almost ask what took so long, but that wasn't my question. My question is, you quoted an 85% repayment experience, based on the experience of others. Do you anticipate any, local variables or factors in Cowichan that would indicate you're going to have anything other than that sort of claims or repayment experience?
Yeah, what we've discovered from talking to other rent banks that have been running for years is that the better you know your client, the more connection you have to them, the more likely you are to get repaid. So I think the 85% number is based on that you have a fairly solid connection to the people you're loaning your money to. They're not sort of appearing as strangers. That's why we've chosen to work with our local nonprofits throughout the region. They're going to have those connections to the clients, and that's really, it seems to be the key to getting your money back, essentially, is that, that you know the client, that you have that ongoing relationship with them. They don't borrow the money and then you have to go track them down 6 months later to find them. So that's really what we're hoping to do, is to have those established relationships be the basis upon which we make those loans, and then you get a fairly decent repayment schedule based out of that. So that's our intent, is to work in that angle, and that's really how you get your money back, is the relationship.
Great. Seeing no other hands up, I'd like to thank you very much, Mr. Horn. We do our virtual clap for all delegations.
So I do have two other items for this, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I won't clap for you now then.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Okay. I'll hold the applause meter. All righty.
All right. The second item, I would say that the rent bank is one we've been working on for several months now. It's a thoughtful process. We'll go into it slowly and thoughtfully and create a good system. But some things move much faster than that. And one of those things is that we have, of course, the project development funding that's available for nonprofits and others in the community who want to proceed and make an application to BC Housing for affordable housing. Recently, Duncan Housing Society came to us. It was about a week ago and a week and a half ago. And they asked us if they could get $25,000 in project development funding. Normally what we do with those requests is we bring that to the Housing Trust Fund Allocations Committee for a review and a recommendation. That goes to our board of directors here at the Cowichan Housing Association for a review and recommendation. And then that's brought forward to the CVRD Regional Services Committee for final review and approval or not. So essentially that process does take quite a bit of time. As you can imagine, that's 3 committees altogether. And what BC Housing has done is they have a call for proposals out there right now, the Community Housing Program, the Community Housing Fund. That closes on January the 15th. This is the fund that Duncan Housing Society has been working up an application for quite some time. They've had a number of meetings with the BC Housing staff who are very encouraging, and they're looking to redevelop the Duncan Manor site. And they want to build at the scale of about 250 units. They've chosen that number with support from BC Housing because they want to build at that scale. And so they'd like to very much proceed with submitting an application to that program by January the 15th. They stand in front of us now seeking an additional $25,000. We gave them $25,000 in the summer to investigate a site. It turned out that site was not workable. They've had to shift their gears and find a different site. They've identified that second site, and they're asking for money to do some of the preliminary work, surveys, massing studies, etc., that will allow them to get an application in by January the 15th. So they still have to hire professionals if they're given the money, etc., etc. So that there's a bit of a time crunch on this one. Normally, I would go through the process. There would be a staff report. There would be one landing on your agenda that said, would you consider giving $25,000 in PDF funding to the Duncan Housing Society for this purpose? But they're cognizant of the time crunch, that if you miss the deadline for that community housing fund, that's the big one. And that's potentially 250 units of affordable housing for the county. And they've said to us, we're awful sorry for rushing you, but is there any way we can speed this process up? So I've sent that application to our Housing Trust Fund Allocation Committee for review, but that still leaves 2 more steps. Our board of directors, who can convene on an emergency basis and review the application, and then coming to you. And that might put us so far back down the calendar that they may miss that application deadline. I think that would be a shame because it is one of the bigger applications coming from the Valley, and BC Housing has been very supportive of it, so I think it has a good chance. But I hate to have it sort of delayed or miss the deadline because this process might take too long. So I'm just throwing that on the table today to see if you have any suggestions about how we might be able to speed that up and be able to provide an answer to the Duncan Housing Society in a fairly short period of time. And again, I apologize for time crunching you on that, but it is a hard deadline from BC Housing. January the 15th is the latest you can submit your application for community housing funds, and this one's quite a good sized application, 250 units. We'd really like to see that proceed, and they need some basic work on the property before they can submit that application. So I don't know if you have any thoughts or suggestions about how we might handle this particular request, and maybe I'll just stop talking for a minute and see if you have any thoughts.
Thank you. I do have Director Sebring.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My connection is a little slow. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good. I'm jerky on my own screen, so I don't know what's going on. I'm just going to turn my video off. Sometimes that helps. John, thank you very much for the presentation. I'm a little bit confused. You talked originally about redeveloping Duncan Manor, and then you talk about identifying a second site. I'm very familiar with the first site and why it didn't work. Can you talk at all about the second site? Or is
Absolutely.
It okay.
Thank you, Mayor Sebring. What happened on the first site was they were proposing to build 250 units on the first site, their existing property. And when we did the geotechnical analysis of the site, it turns out that it's insufficient in load-bearing terms. Sorry to get all engineering on you, but you can't put a big building on that site. You can't dig out a big hole in the ground either because of the water tables. So BC Housing said we can rebuild on the existing footprint, but we can only rebuild to 125 units at that site. We'll need a second site. So we're not just rebuilding the 122 units that have aged out. We want to double and build 250 units. So bring us a second site and we'll do a two-phase development. One would be develop the second site with 125 or 150 units, move everyone from Duncan Manor into the new site, demolish Duncan Manor, and rebuild on the Duncan Manor footprint. That's the proposed two-stage development because the one site is unable to take the 250 units. And they feel it's a shame to just rebuild the existing slot because you haven't added any to the community. They do want to add affordable housing to the community with this project. So that's why they're not able to hit the 250 on the existing site. They need to do it over two sites at about 125 at each site. So that's why they're taking a second site, and that's why they're scrambling around to sort of investigate the second site to ensure that it can be done.
Do they have if I may, Madam Chair, do they have a second site location in mind? I guess that's what I was getting at. Can you talk about that?
Thank you, sir. And yes, they do. They've worked with the city of Duncan to identify a site. I think it's been shared with the residents of that area. That would be the courthouse behind the courthouse on Government Street there. So it's a city of Duncan owned site. They've been in discussion with the city of Duncan who are, interested in making that available for this purpose. They've had discussion with the senior center folks that currently occupy that site. And the agreement would be that they would incorporate a new senior center into the development, so to refresh that infrastructure as well. And then they'd have to also provide parking for the courthouse staff. So there's a couple of considerations on that site, but it is downtown. City of Duncan is willing to potentially make that available. It will hold the numbers that we hope to hold on that site. So that's the second site that's being contemplated for this. And again, they have to do a bit of investigation before they can roll off with an application saying, yes, we're going to be able to put 125 units on this site.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair. And for whatever it's worth, if we need to make a recommendation today to support this application, I'd be willing to move that. Not now. Let's hear the discussion. I think that's what we got to do in terms of the urgency. Thank you.
I see that. Thank you, Director Sebring. This is a bit unusual, but there is a time crunch. I'm looking to the committee if they feel that a resolution to help out this situation would be appropriate. Director Marsh?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do feel it would be appropriate, but I think I heard, John, you say that you would have to demolish Duncan Manor.
That's the understanding, yes. The building is aged out and is not really worth fixing, so to speak.
Right. So how many residents are there now?
There's 122 units. Some of those are empty right now because of structural issues, I think, but there's about 115 residents on the property, I believe.
So what is the plan to house them while this other development is being built?
Well, they'll remain in Duncan Manor until the first phase is developed and fully ready to occupy. And then they'll transfer from Duncan Manor into the new building. And then they'll tear down Duncan Manor and build a new building there. And those will be 122 new units that would be available on an application basis, I'm assuming. So no disruption to the existing tenancies, hopefully. Yeah.
I should have realized that you had some kind of pocket of brilliance going on here. That's great. I'm very supportive, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to turn to staff if they have any comments on this, if there's any process procedure. Go ahead, Ms. Weiner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things, if the money is going to be expended within 2020, there would also need to be amendment to the budget to be able to allow this to occur. So that would have to be approved by the board, as well as, yes, we'd need to put it forward for board approval.
Thank you. So a resolution currently now could be to the board approval, but it also has to be, okay. Okay, Director Stone.
So is that budget amendment required if it's coming from funds that have already been transferred to Cowichan Housing Association? So John, just so I'm clear, this funding would come from the existing allocation that you've already been transferred for 2020?
Yeah, we have not been transferred any of the housing trust fund dollars. That's held by the CBRD, and we come and ask for it each time.
Okay.
Which does make it a bit laborious, but it's the democratic thing to do, of course, so we're fine with that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So Ms. Weiner, then to you, Isn't that already allocated though in the budget, the project development funds? We already approved that item with the budget last year.
Ms. Weiner?
Through the chair to Director Stone, we transfer the money and it shows in the budget as a transfer to reserve. So this would not be, so we'd be amending to increase the grant to organization and decrease the transfer to the housing fund. That would be the budget amendment.
Okay, thank you. I would be comfortable supporting it, you know, providing that it completed its other approval processes with both the committee at Cowichan Housing and the board, because usually we rely on that recommendation, but I'll leave it to the committee as to how we approach that from a resolution standpoint.
Okay, I have Director Smith, actually.
Thank you. One of the things that I'd like to see is a report for us to actually go through. There's been this, the Manor site, then we're talking about a different site. I think that all those details need to be put down in black and white in a report for us to actually see what it is we're looking at. There's talking about moving funding, making amendments to our budget for this. I think this is an important step forward that we may need to not just make resolutions on the fly. We've heard that before. I think having a document that we can actually look at and look at where money's moving, where money's coming from, and also where people are moving would really be beneficial at this time. We do have a meeting in 2 weeks for the board, and then it's possible that it could come to the board in 2 weeks. But I'm not in a hurry. I see the urgency, but I think it's really important that as directors, we look at a document in black and white, and that the communities who are funding these tax dollars need to also see it in black and white before we start moving through something on the fly. Thank you.
Director Marsh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I really respect what Director Smith is saying. And, accountability is really important. But I have a different point of view. I think the community told us they wanted us to build affordable housing when they approved the affordable housing, I forget what you call it, the function. And if BC Housing says this is a good place and they're going to land us the money to build it, I think that delaying it at all could put that in jeopardy, and I'm not willing to do that. So I have every confidence in the Cowichan Housing Association and BC Housing, and then perhaps to allay the concerns of Director Smith and the black and white report, which will come as the thing unfolds, then we can share it with the community. But I fear in this time of COVID and winter, if this board was to put this off, it would be actually counterproductive to people's thinking well of us. So I would like to go ahead today and recommend that the board approve the money. And I guess I would say if we don't trust BC Housing and we don't trust the CHA to have done their homework as well as they can, and we've heard from Mr. Horn that he's going to get that committee to get looking at it and call an emergency board meeting. It just seems to me we need to be nimble. These are scary times, and people need to be housed. So I'd like to be nimble, and I'm happy to second the motion if Councillor or Director Sebring wants to make it.
I have a few more speakers first. I have Director Salmon, then Director Stone.
Thank you. So just process question. I was assuming we would look at it in principle today and it would go to the board in 2 weeks, which is less time. I just question for Mr. Horn, is that enough time for you? 2 weeks from now if we approve it?
I think we'll work with whatever you give us. The January 15th deadline is the hard number, so 2 weeks brings us to about the second week of December. I think that they could get some of the work done in the next couple of weeks, if that was the start date, if so to speak. Yeah. And we would be happy, of course, we don't expect you to go on a blind faith, that we would be providing the documentation, the standard, here's the request, and here's the review process, and here's what the recommendations are, etc. So we're certainly willing and able to provide that backup documentation. And again, I apologize, I usually don't kind of rush things at you, that's not fair, but again, these timely matters sometimes pop up, and we just try to be nimble, as you say. So,
Okay, thank you.
Director Stone?
Well, that actually leads to my question to Mr. Horn. Would the process that you would do, would you be able to complete that by the December 9th board meeting? So in other words, have that. So I think if we did make a resolution today that it would be subject to receiving that information prior to the board approving it at the December 9th meeting, would allow some a level of confidence that should the appropriate information and justification be provided before the December 9th board meeting, that the board, support in principle. So, or that the committee support in principle, subject to receiving what we would usually receive before the board ratifies. That would, I think, satisfy the need for urgency and also the need for all the documentation that we would expect. And if the board was uncomfortable with what they received on December 9th, they could decide not to move forward. Thanks.
Okay, I'll come back to you, Director Stone, for that resolution, and I have another speaker, Director Kuhn.
I don't like resolutions on the fly, and I don't think there's a resolution necessary today. I think I would like to see a report back, and I think there's enough time to deal with this in the proper way, and I'd like to do it that way. Thank you.
Okay, I'm turning to Director Stone. I'm seeing no more hands up. Director Stone.
Ms. Weiner has her hand up too.
Ms. Weiner?
Through the chair, just responding to Director Kuhn, if staff received by Tuesday the report, I can prepare a proper report, regular report to go straight to the board, and following that process.
Director Stone.
Sorry, that was going to be actually my suggestion, was that we not make a resolution, just direct it to come directly to the board on December 9th. That would give comfort that we're not making a resolution on the fly. We're not making a decision without the appropriate information, but it really would follow the established timelines, that we just give staff the freedom to bring that directly to the board on December 9th.
So direction to staff is sufficient. We can move along. Direction to staff is sufficient, Ms. Weiner? There we go. Okay. Seeing no other hands up, I have Director Marsh again. Director Marsh.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Horn. Do you think this in any way jeopardizes the chance to get the funding?
I think we can make it work for this, Councillor Marsh. I think that we can get through our processes and get a report to you by Tuesday. That'll be available to you for review on the 9th. And I think it is what it is. We can work with that. And I appreciate again that we normally don't rush at you with things like that, and I apologize, but that's certainly fine for us. I was looking for the solution from you folks, and that would work. We can make that work. And we will do our bit at this end to make everything line up for that.
Thank you.
So in other words, you're pretty sure we wouldn't lose
I'm pretty sure we can still make it through, yeah.
But there still is a possibility we might not.
It just puts them in a little bit of a crunch. They're going to have to hurry up when they get the dollars, and that's okay. I think they'll line it up. The ability to line up the work is the key, and then by the 9th, if they can proceed, they'll probably have the schedule in place. So I'll be back in conversation with them and informing them of our discussions today, and they can sort of quasi-anticipate scheduling things and then wait till they get a final approval on the dollars and then sort of pull the trigger, if you will. So I think together we'll work collectively to make that happen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Horn. Is there anything else before I give you your
last item? No more, not quite yet.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Not quite yet. One more item. Just one more.
Okay.
Thank you, and I appreciate your time you're giving me today. I just wanted to give you a very brief update on our COVID-19 homelessness response that we're working on. As you know, we have our tenting sites in the Ramada Hotel. BC Housing has agreed to fund that project through till March 31st. So we will be maintaining those sites and the hotel for the temporary emergency housing for the homeless during this frame, right through till March 31st. And because we're now going through the winter, our goal is to replace the tents that we started out with. So the folks in the Ramada Hotel, they're in a dry, warm, comfortable building. That's fine. But the people who we put in tenting sites back in March are still in Canadian Tire summer tents. And they have expressed to us that while they very much appreciate the site, they feel safe there, and you don't want to leave it, but they are getting increasingly cold and miserable trying to live in a tent in November, December, January, February. It's going to be a difficult several months for them. So we propose to swap out those tents and give them something a little more robust, a little more winterized, if you will. And what we propose to do is to purchase a number of, I'm going to call them sleeping cabins. And they're very small 8x8 sheds with drywall, insulation, a heater, a light, and a plug. And the goal is to provide people with a way of staying warm that does not involve open flames, which is what they'll turn to soon enough if we don't provide something that allows them to stay warm through the night. So our goal is to do that, and we have approached the federal government, and we believe that we will be getting some funding from them in order to purchase these units and then to bring electrical service to the sites. That's the St. Julian site and the two sites at the Mound. So we're also working with the town of Ladysmith. They're considering this option as well. So all in all, we would probably buy 40 odd of these units and swap out the tents that people are currently living in and give them something a bit dry and warm with an electric baseboard that they would be able to warm themselves with and not use open flames. So there's lots of technical bits to go along with that. We're discussing with the staff at the City of Duncan and with the staff at the Cowichan Tribes about how that would all work in practice. But I did want to let you know that that is our goal, that we want to get people out of tents through these winter months. And then as of March 31st, this initiative would close out. I think that's the funding frame from BC Housing right now. And then that would be that. But we would get people through the winter and not ask them to sleep in tents through the next 3 months of rain and snow and cold. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention to let you know where we're at with that. And the last piece of that is that we expect to make a transition out of these temporary emergency accommodations at some point. And the goal would be to apply to the federal government's Rapid Housing Initiative. You may have seen that advertised lately. And that's the $1 billion that was made available for rapid housing responses. Half of that has gone to the big cities, Vancouver's and Toronto's, etc. But the other half is available to anyone else in Canada who makes an application. We think we stand a chance in the Cowichan because we are now a designated community under the federal government for homelessness. We will be prioritized on that basis over those communities who are not designated as we are now. So we want to put in an application to that. That deadline is December 31st. Again, it's always a hurry up show with these funding applications. We would come before you at some point, probably seeking a letter of support for that application. We're still very much in the gestational stage of putting that together about where it would happen, what it would look like. But it is meant to be rapid, and it is meant to be that you buy modular housing units and you put them up, and within 6 months, or 3 months if you're going fast, you put people in housing within 3 months. And our goal would be to transition people from these tents or sleeping cabins into permanent, affordable, supported housing. And the funding would come presumably and hopefully from the federal government via the National Housing Strategy, this Rapid Housing Initiative. Lots of communities are applying for this. It's very competitive. There's $500 million on the table, but that's the whole country. So there are no guarantees, but we will work very diligently to put together a quality application and see if we can secure some of those fundings. That's the goal, is to transition away from our emergency response that BC Housing is paying for right now under COVID and into something permanent, supported, affordable, and more appropriate for the long term than what we're doing at the moment. So I just wanted to let you know where that's going and that we may provide correspondence to the board seeking support for our application to that Rapid Housing Initiative. And again, we're burning away on that. The deadline's December 31st, and we're hoping to put in a good quality application to see if we can snag some of that money for the Cowichan Valley. So that's just the final update. I wanted to make sure that you're aware of that and what our plans and intents were there. So happy to field any questions or comments related to that.
Yes, I have two hands up. I have Director Sebring, then Director Marsh, I believe. Did you want to speak? Okay, Director Sebring, go ahead, please.
Just a very quick observation. John, thank you for that update. You missed the most important part. And the most important part to me is that the sleeping cabins are actually being built in the industrial park in Tremaine. We have a company that's putting that together, and it's really, really exciting. So thank you very much.
Keeping it local. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Is there anything else, Mr. Horn?
I think I've used up as much of your time today as I'm going to get. So
Great.
Thank you for your
Director Staples has a question. I missed your hand there. Director Staples. Can't hear you.
She'll have to do it in sign language.
Are you having a challenge with your microphone? Okay, so we can move on? Maybe not. Okay, so we will move on. Thanks again, Mr. Horn.
Good time.
Move on to our next delegation. Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, there's no sort of chat thing like they have on Zoom for this WebEx?
Yes, there is.
Could
down in the bottom right corner.
So I wonder if Mayor Staples would like to chat her question.
She sort of just waved us on. Is there? We'll wait a second. She's still having a challenge.
Madam Chair, we've got a long day today. Can we move along, please?
Okay. So we'll go to our next delegation, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item D1 is Jill Doucette, founder and CEO of Synergy Enterprises regarding Project Zero Circular Economy Overview for information.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me today. It's a real pleasure. I have been hearing that maybe you're a little bit behind schedule, so I will try to move through this quickly. And there's nothing in here for decision making, so no pressure. I'll just share a slide deck that I put together. Some of you may have heard about Project Zero, and perhaps some of you haven't, but it's become Vancouver Island's project around the circular economy, which to many may be a new term, but it's something that you'll see in some of the economic recovery strategies that the province has put out. It's been put into several sort of strategic documents. And I wanted to come here today just to share some opportunities that I believe exist in the Cowichan Valley region as a whole around sort of taking advantage of this sort of new concept to address environmental issues, as well as hopefully facilitating a strong economic recovery. Okay, so are you able to see this screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So just really quickly, the Synergy Foundation is a Vancouver Island-based nonprofit, and we focus on a green, facilitating a green economy here on Vancouver Island. So we have a number of programs. We were founded in 2013, and our three key focus areas to date are green business, food security, and the circular economy. One of our programs that we ran on food security during COVID was called My Fed Farms, and we delivered 514 food growing kits to homes around the capital regional districts. That was a very busy summer for us. And yeah, I think there's so much that we can do and as a part of our economic recovery through these three lenses. So the circular economy, it's a newish term. When I speak to groups of business people, there's maybe, 2 out of a couple dozen that will have heard of this term, so it is new, but it is quite simple. It's really about how much of our material and energy flow is recycled in our world. And right now, for material flows, we know that our world is only 9% circular. So that's all of our recycling. When we think of what actually goes back into the system and can be continually recycled, those are things like aluminums, quality plastics, some wood fiber, but most of our waste or most of our products are designed for landfill or to go into the ecosystem at their end of life. So this is a huge gap that we need to fill in our economy, 91% gap. Being a coastal community, we're also very aware of the marine debris waste. 18 billion pounds of plastic waste enters our oceans every year. So there's some obviously major environmental reasons for addressing our waste issues. In addition, it's a significant part of local government's carbon footprint in that category for its methane production. So the traditional linear economy moves from, of course, extraction of raw materials, production, distribution, consumption, and waste. Hence the term circular economy, which looks to power that whole linear process with renewable energy, and then look at the ways that this waste can be circulated back for reconsumption, redistribution, production, etc. So just to share a couple of examples, on the reduce side, we can look at products that we purchase that ideally aren't wasted and the packaging is drastically reduced. So these products we buy add real value to our lives and businesses, but we can reduce the amount of waste we create at the end user point. We can also look at reusing and repairing. One of the businesses in our incubator program right now is working on creating a business to repair outdoor gear to keep that out of landfills. So a great new business that's looking to hire several people over the next couple of years. Redistribution, we're familiar with this model already. These are the restores, the thrift stores, even the online buy and sell markets. So someone's waste is another person's resource. Then we get into a bit more of the heavy processing. So reconditioning is where products are returned to the manufacturer for reconditioning or upgrading. And then our traditional recycling model. So this is where products have reached their end of life and they're no longer useful, but the raw materials can be extracted and turned into another good. And of course, we want this whole process to be powered by renewable energy to minimize emissions and design an economy that is in line with the Paris Accord. So our vision for 2040 on Vancouver Island is to have a thriving circular economy where we share more than we own, which would free income and spare resources. Where new innovations are born, we really feel that Vancouver Island can be a place that inspires other regions to start new kinds of circular businesses or adopt new models. Where products are made and repaired locally is a big one. And using the circular economy to bring in a lens of economic equality as well. So providing jobs where there is a lack of. And of course, where one's waste is another's resource. So this looks a little bit more at the business to business side or industry to industry. Does one produce a waste that is a resource in another's process? And that term is industrial symbiosis. So we've actually been working with entrepreneurs in the Cowichan Valley for a couple of years. We have a incubator program that has an annual cohort of businesses. And I wanted to come and talk to you today because we're seeing a lot of innovation coming out of Cowichan. And you know, this program is open to all of Vancouver Island, but there's some Cowichan entrepreneurs that seem to dominate the quality applications and are really doing some incredible stuff. So this is our first cohort here, and I just wanted to share a couple of these business ideas because the circular economy can be quite vague, and I wanted to give you some examples of what it really looks like on the ground. So this is a business venture called Flipside Plastics. She has recently named her company, and it's essentially a micro recycling center. So taking plastics, shredding them, pelletizing them, and then using 3D printing and press molds to create anything. This could be plastic lumber for constructing city benches. You can really make anything with these microplastic recycling facilities. engineering. So this is redesigning refrigeration systems. So for example, for rec centers, looking at heat recapture between arenas and pools. So some complex engineering, but bringing a German technology to Canada and really creating a specialization. Another one, this is in Chemainus. So Bioflame already operates a biomass briquette business, and they're looking to get into the biomass district heating centers to service municipalities as well as large institutions. So this one's called Bioflame, and his business is getting up and running, and I think going to be a real success, not just on Vancouver Island, but probably off island as well. Ergo, another Cowichan Valley business who I'm sure you already know of. They take the waste cooking oil and turn it into biodiesel, but they are also developing a line of commercial lubricants and other product innovations, such as foam release agents for construction. Nyoka is a compostable bioluminescent glow stick. So this glow stick is made with seaweed-based plastic and bioluminescence for the glow. These are a couple of biochem nerds from the University of Victoria, self-proclaimed, that have started this really innovative business. They're now based in Courtenay and starting to build up their team and hire and distribute these really unique products all over the world. So that's just a little snapshot of what can be created when we look at waste differently and we think about product innovation. I think that there's a great opportunity in the CVRD to incorporate the circular economy into an economic recovery strategy. Some key sectors, of course, for CVRD: agriculture, in waste reduction, carbon storage, value-add products; in forestry through, again, value-add product innovations, biomass, etc. And in construction through deconstruction and waste to resource. I know construction is a major sector in the CVRD, or at least it was in your last report. So looking at deconstruction instead of demolition for a way to create new jobs and get more value out of that waste and keep it out of your landfill. So those are three key sectors that I think would be great to focus on at the outset. And what can regional districts do? This is just an example of what other regional districts have done in Canada or in other places in the world to start to think about the circular economy. So first, inventorying your region's circular economy opportunities in more detail. Support innovations in both existing businesses to transition to a circular economy and supporting new startup models that will create more employment opportunities. And creating regional hubs. So maybe this is a incubation center or using some light industrial land to bring back some local manufacturing to create circular solutions. Educating your industries, consumers, local governments and institutions about the circular economy and how it can be applied. And also just looking at, what innovators do you already have and how can you support them to scale their existing solutions? So we have some resources for free for businesses that any of your organizations are welcome to share, including waste audit tools and different workshops that we can host for communities. So I will leave it there. I didn't want to take up too much of your time, but I hope that wasn't too fast. Just wanted to thank you for having me today.
I'd like to thank you so much. If you could put your screen down, I think you might have a few questions.
Sure.
And this is so exciting. I have Director Salmon. You have a question? Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Very interesting. The Bioflame in Chemainus, I happened to see a pallet of those in the building supply store the other day, and of course I had to buy one since it was Chemainus, and hopefully I haven't actually tried them yet. But my question, actually, last night on the National was it profiled an operation in Nova Scotia that just uses regular landfill waste, just bags of regular garbage, and produces wood pellets and diesel fuel. And is that the type of thing? I wonder, are there any operations like that on the island that might be in the feasibility phase or that you're aware of?
Using landfill waste?
Yeah.
I have heard of there was an organization on Vancouver Island who was looking to to bring that technology here. I have heard of it and I've seen the feasibility studies for them. The capital cost is a pretty major constraint for those systems. I believe like 30 million to get it off the ground. So the ones I've seen, I haven't seen it being done here, but I've heard of people talking about it and sort of exploring it from a feasibility standpoint.
So Director Marsh, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very excited about this. It's something we've been talking about at North Cowichan, a circular economy, and this is kind of a different take on it that I didn't quite get. And I found myself, when you were speaking about the fellow from Polar Engineering, I wonder if what he's got would be helpful for 3 very large projects that are going to be built here, hopefully, unless COVID changes things, in the next few years. And one is a hospital, a high school, and I've forgotten the third one, but it's hospital, the high school, the RCMP building. And they're all within, I would say, I don't know, Al, if you could help me with this, 2 or 3 miles of each other. I just think that, I know in North Van, they have a district energy where they just keep adding on and adding on and adding on. And I just wonder if this creative brain could, add something to that possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are the exact types of projects that are worth sitting down and talking about and saying, who can we bring in to advise on some opportunities we can capitalize on here, especially with the district heating. That's more similar to the Bioflame model. And I'm familiar with North Vancouver. I actually have some clients who are developers over there who despise their district heating system because it currently burns natural gas. They don't have enough supply of biomass over there. So they essentially have to buy onto a dirtier energy. So that's not a situation you want to get into, in North Cowichan. You want to be able to, but you're in a way better position because you can talk to your forestry partners and solidify that supply. Bioflame doesn't have an issue with supply because they're so diversified being where they are. So I think that there's a great opportunity there for looking at biomass district heating on those projects, as well as, especially for the hospital, looking at the heat recovery refrigeration system, and perhaps those two in tandem. But absolutely, hospitals will often get built, and then 10 years later, they realize, we should have spent, $100,000 more at the construction site. Now we have to renovate and spend $1 million to upgrade to this new system. So, would definitely recommend reaching out to some of those local entrepreneurs.
Okay, so I have a
follow-up, Director Marsh. I have somebody else. Okay.
So are you saying that we would need to do that reaching out, or would that be something that you would inform these entrepreneurs about these 3 builds? And I'd actually like to add a building that's already built, which is the aquatic center. And there's a lot of that's being lost there.
Yes, for sure. Whatever you prefer, I'd be happy to just simply inform these entrepreneurs and they can reach out. Of course, it's helpful to have some kind of direct contact. So if you could advise on who they should reach out to in the chat or something, I'd be happy to connect.
Okay, thank you so much, Director Marsh. We'll move on to Director Morrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question through to Jill, and you just very briefly touched on the repair aspect of so many of the consumer products that are available to us today. And I know that the right to repair movement is a pretty big deal in other jurisdictions. And so I don't know if it's something that's receiving a lot of focus from your group, or if there's linkages to other groups, because it's getting to the point where if you buy $1,000 appliance and you simply can't repair it. I know of an appliance repair person that essentially will come and look at something and say you may as well buy a new one because the cost of repair is more than what it's worth. So where are you at on that?
To be honest, our organization doesn't do a lot of lobbying or advocacy on right to repair. We tend to focus more on the business innovation side than the consumer rights side, but we do follow those movements and support them when we can, when it's simple to do so. But because there are so many organizations actively working on that, we thought we should fill that space of supporting our local entrepreneurs and scaling up these innovations. But you're absolutely right. And one, for example, even with like Arc'teryx, if you buy a tent or Patagonia, any of those brands, if you buy anything from, say, Mountain Equipment Co-op, right now, it's not worth it for them to ship it across the country where there's a certified Gore-Tex repair person. So they will just give you a new one and landfill that old product. So this company called Basecamp Outdoor Repairs will allow warranties to actually be issued locally for those organizations. So I think it's a bit of a mix of the right to repair and the design aspect, and having the local resources to repair when you have that repair.
Thank you so much. I have Director Toporowski.
Thank you, Chair. Kate, you're not muted. We can hear. Thanks. Just wanted to thank you for your presentation, Jill. And I was quite excited to read a little bit more. I even looked you up on the internet and went through all of everybody that's on your team, and it's quite exciting. What I wanted to say, I'm going to make it quick too. I have it here. By 2040, Vancouver Island will exist as a thriving circular economy. I seen that in the presentation somewhere. So my point was to say, have you reached out to the local First Nations on the island in regards to this presentation? Because I think it would be very interesting to our economic development at Cowichan Tribes to have this presentation as well. So I think they're, moving forward in looking at new ways of energy sources, and also with diverting garbage.
We have started to work with First Nations more recently. We helped the Nitinak community and did create a plan for a basically zero waste strategy. Right now, all of their waste goes to the Duncan landfill and they don't have any recycling capacity. So that's a good win. But we would love to do more of that work. That was our first First Nations project that just wrapped up. So we're hoping to do more in 2021. We also applied for funding from the federal government to do these projects for First Nations at no cost to them. So fingers crossed, but if there are any who would simply like a presentation, we're always happy to do that. Speaking of presentations, I'd also, Barry just reminded me, we are hosting a circular economy workshop in January in collaboration with Economic Development Cowichan. So there is an Eventbrite link and I will put it in the chat, and that will be one where we can engage some of the local business community and others in your community. So please join.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I think the possibilities are endless, and it's really exciting in these dreary days of what's going on, this is exciting for me, something that I was hoping for years. So thank you very much, Jill. And we'd like to give you our appreciation for coming today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you making the time in your schedule. I know there's many other urgent things.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, it is 10:30. Is everyone okay? It's a little after 10:30. Seeing we don't, so we'll move on to Ms. Legault, correspondence.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No correspondence or information items, so on to reports. Item R1 is a report from the Parks and Trails Division regarding Osborne Bay Regional Park, notice of lease agreement termination. And the proposed recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that a letter be sent to the municipality of North Cowichan acknowledging receipt of the notice of lease termination for Osborne Bay Regional Park effective January 1st, 2021.
It's been moved. Is there a seconder? Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. Director Salmon?
Yeah, thank you. Just question for Mr. Farquhar maybe, but just could we have a brief summary of what this is? Is this what kind of a lease termination are we looking at here?
It was in our report.
Yes, but I wasn't clear whether it was just for the maintenance or for the.
Mr. Farquhar, oh, there you are. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a lease that was originally set up with the municipality of North Cowichan for them to operate and maintain Osborne Bay Park at a time when the regional district did not have a functioning regional park service. So in effect, with the termination of the lease, as noted in the report, all the operation, all the maintenance, all the responsibilities otherwise were covered in the lease that were being under the responsibility of North Cowichan would be with the regional district as our regional park.
Director Sebring?
I just want to add a little clarity to this. This came to our council a few weeks ago, and the board needs to know this is not a case of North Cowichan saying we're done and walking away in a huff. We sent the cancellation letter at the request of the CB who said, we're ready to take over.
You're cutting out. Maybe you can
because
oh, there he goes. I think we got the gist of that conversation.
All I'm trying to say is it's not like we're walking away in a huff. This is very much planned and at the instigation of staff at the CBRD because the function exists now. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much for the clarification. And I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? It's unanimous. I will move on. It's been carried. Thank you. We'll move on to R2, Ms. Legault. Just a second. I have
Lori, I apologize, but I did have my hand up and I had some additional questions. So.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Would you like to go ahead?
Well, I was interested what the additional staff time, the contract costs, and that would be associated with this as it'll come into our 2021 budget. Is there any information on that?
Mr. Farquhar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As noted in the staff report, there will be no increase in operation or maintenance costs. Otherwise, we're budgeted in 2020. So the same budget is being put forward for 2021. So there will be no increase in costs projected and no increase in staff time otherwise that has been spent dealing with this as regional park over the years under the function.
Okay. Did I miss anybody? Now it's hard with these screens, getting used to them. Sorry, Director Smith. Okay, so we can move on now to R2. Ms. Legault?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R2 is a report from the Recycling and Waste Management Division regarding Clean BC grant to support future universal curbside service. And the proposed recommendation is that it be recommended to the board, 1, that a grant application to the Clean BC Organic Infrastructure and Collection Program to support organic curbside collection in electoral areas be approved. And 2, that subject to grant approval, the Cowichan Valley Regional District commits to 1/3 of all eligible program costs under the Clean BC Organic Infrastructure and Collection Program and all ineligible costs associated with the implementation of organic curbside collection in electoral areas.
Okay, Director Morrison, would you like to speak to it? Move the recommendation. Is there a second?
Move the recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Director Sebring.
All right, I'm going to turn my video off on the assumption that helps with my bandwidth. I don't know what's going on this morning. Just a question with respect to the costing of this. If we go ahead with it, bullet 2 talks about costs associated with the implementation. This is being billed to electoral areas only, correct? I'm just worried that this is going to come out of general government. My people are already paying for curbside pickup of kitchen in North Cowichan. Same goes true in Duncan. We're not, and the municipalities aren't ending up paying for this, are they?
Who would you be speaking to on staff?
I'll take that one, Madam Chair.
Mr. Crothers, go ahead, please.
Yes, that is an electoral area service function.
Thank you.
And it's been moved and seconded. Director Acton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to understand a little better how this will affect our areas where we have a private service.
Mr. Warwick?
Yeah, welcome. Good morning. Through to you, Madam Chair. So this is the approval of solid waste management plan. So this is one of the strategies from there. And so this has been approved that there will be a universal 3-stream curbside service in all electoral areas. What we're supposed to do now is to have a feasibility study. So that is a feasibility study in terms of who will provide a service, what will be the service, how much would be the cost of that. So we're doing all of that. Out of that, we'll be coming out with some survey questions. They will be happening next year.
Director Toporowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask, it says to divert organic waste from the landfill. In this funding that we would apply for, would there be education opportunities for residents to learn about composting, or how good this stuff that we throw into our garbage is good for your garden? Thanks.
Go ahead, Mr. Warwick.
Through to you, Madam Chair. Yes, absolutely. So this will come out with the number one education through the survey as well. That what are those 3-stream and what does it really mean? And also going forward, we will prepare a comprehensive education plan for all 3 streams.
Go ahead. Thank you. Director Salmon, Marsh, am I missing anyone? Director Salmon, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. Just to follow up on Director Atkin, it's funny, as she was speaking, the little pan disposal truck went down our street at the corner of my eye here. So I know that'll be an issue with the very popular local private service. However, my question is, does this envision a garden waste pickup too, or will we be leaving that as the way it is now?
Go ahead, Mr. Warwick.
Through to you, Madam Chair. So we're developing the options for services. So we will consider the 3-stream, which is the food waste, recycling, and garbage. And then we'll also consider the optional additional services that will go to community for the survey. And that will potentially include the glass, yard and garden, and other plastics that they cannot be included in the Recycle BC program.
Okay, can I see Director Marsh?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Warwick, I just want to say how excited I was to read in the report that this grant was announced in October, and here we are just a month later, and you've got a plan. And I really want to acknowledge you and the Recycling and Waste Management Division and the Engineering Services Department for being on top of this at a time that's really challenging, I'm sure, for you in many ways. Just a week ago, we've been announced all these new restrictions, and your department, it's just invaluable, and I'm really excited how you're always looking to improve. So thank you very much, and please pass that on to your colleagues.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. I don't see any other hands up. Hopefully I haven't missed anyone. Director Smith. Go ahead, Director Smith.
Thank you. I appreciate all the work that is done in the engineering department regarding solid waste and our recycling. This is going to be a new opportunity. There's many people moving from larger communities into electoral areas, and they are looking for their green bin. No? And a lot of the people in electoral areas do already compost, and they feel that when they have the green bin that they will be putting they won't be using them. So I think it's a bit of a complex area, and I know that Mr. Warch is very familiar with electoral areas and that attitude that people are looking to compost and not looking to have to buy back their something that they could compost. So I know that as you work through this is going to be a little more complicated with the electoral areas, and I appreciate you looking at this grant to soften this possibly for our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. I did see Director Morrison's hand up. Go ahead, Director Morrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is exciting news. I hope we get the grant, and I'd like to be at the first of the line if we need to do a pilot project and test this, because we've already got weekly pickup in the summertime. And with that, I'd ask the chair to call the question.
I was about to. I'm seeing no other hands up, and I will now call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Thank you so much. Moving on now to unfinished business. New business. There's no new business. I guess we move straight to question period. Are there any questions for the chair, Ms. Legault?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing has come in.
Thank you so much. We move now a motion to move into closed. Motion to move into closed under, I actually don't have the section.
Under section 91I, legal advice.
Thank you so much. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. And now it's closed in 6 minutes. So we'll have a break for 6 minutes.
Thank you. So I'll end this meeting and